You know, one of these reasons why I'm making these informal looking videos is because I have formally have gone to Bucks County and the proper authorities for over 19 years uh, without an official response. So I have taken the report seriously, and I have formally gone to all departments within Pennsylvania to make complaints about this. So if I'm looked upon for making videos while I'm enjoying nature, that's fine. But just to let everybody know that I formally uh, gone to them for 19 years to tell them something was wrong, and they have systematically told me no. So what happens is that in theory, Bucks County is on the clock since 2007, since my phone call made to the Pennsylvania Child Abuse Hotline. Bucks County is on the clock for me giving them all of our information. Bucks County is on the clock for responding to my phone call about child abuse, child neglect, the the paper for the TBI that is traumatic brain injury that he sustained. So Bucks County has kind of been on the clock since then. Now, I know that when I called that was uh, their warning that there's something wrong here with this court reporter, and because they're on the clock, because they were pre-given all the information by Harrisburg that I called and made a report to Harrisburg, and the call went from Harrisburg to the regional to Bucks County. They'll be found in those three places. Um, my call with my social, his social, her social, uh, they were on the clock, and according to the standard of time, they have 24 hours to return the phone call and or to investigate. Uh, they have never called back nor responded. Bucks County was on the clock to complete uh, a report based on my report, and if they did so without contacting me and made their determination based upon how I nicely spoke to the person on the other end in this tone of voice, telling them about facts and about what I didn't know and about what looked confusing and about how none of this made sense. I said this to that person. So uh, if I have this theory right, so what Bucks County did was is that report came over to them and they said they rubber stamped it. There's nothing there. This woman's good. We know we know otherwise. So they, even though they did that on their end, they didn't inform me of any investigation. So as far as I'm concerned, that phone call that I made never, and I swear this is 19 years later, and not a phone call back. So I don't know how. I have no zero confidence in the Pennsylvania Child Abuse Hotline for keeping my son safe and not responding to allowing this perpetrator, not just in 2007, but the years that preceded that, 2007, she got worse and she made life worse for Josh, and she made life worse for me, and she has hurt people in Bucks County. So that warning that was made to them, they were on the clock. They timed it out. They said, we're not going to do anything about it. We're not going to protect Josh. We're going to protect the mom. I have something wrong. That doesn't sit well with me as a father, but as a citizen, to find out that the county that I live in, the county that I'm raising my son in, that he has no rights to the proper way of attention, not just between 2003 when it happened in Yardley, Pennsylvania, Yardley Borough, Pennsylvania, But in 2007, when I called when I was living in Lower Makefield never even made the phone call. So nobody from Lower Makefield called me. Nobody from Bucks County Child Services. Nobody from Yardley Police. Nobody, no police detectives. Nobody called me to talk to me about this court reporter at any time in the 2007, other than the fact that Diane, the Bucks County Commissioner Diane Ellis Marsiglia, came to my work, gave me her business card, and said, if I could be of any help to you, here's my card. Please do so. I'll be here to help you. Other than that, and other than me having to make court appearances to try and help what has been going on for the past 5 years, I find this piece of paper and then I call and I report it and I tell them there's something wrong with this woman. Please help me help my son, without calling another county, without, they judged my whole situation, that story, and they stopped it, which to me should be against the law. They violated my son's rights to equal protection from this abuser, which I can say that she's an abuser, even though she doesn't have the technical term yet. But under the circumstances, with all the data that I have, that she attempted murder of him based upon what was happening before that day and what happened in her previous relationships. So that's what I didn't see when I first read that piece of paper, until it was able to put the storyline together and understand what has happened. When I made that phone call, that was Bucks County's opportunity to step in and try to protect the child. They could have subpoenaed his medical records. They could have subpoenaed the psychological records. They had access to our court records. They had access to our CCES records. They had access to, they could have had access to, but they didn't ask for one piece of information at all. So as far as I'm concerned, Bucks County is on the clock. So 19 years later, they're still on the clock. So as far as I'm concerned, just because they didn't step in, they could have called Berks County, Chester County, Philadelphia County. They could have had somebody else jump in, which is why I feel as though my help with redesigning the child abuse hotline program, there should have been a red flag because of her location and proximity to those of powers that be within Bucks County working for judges. There should have been a red flag, and Harrisburg should have been notified that this is happening to an employee of Commonwealth of Pennsylvania. So Harrisburg doesn't know what happened, and they're the ones responsible for the phone call, which is fairly odd to me. There was no red flag given to the other department that got it before Bucks County about this federal employee worker, which is, I believe that's what she is, a county, federal, state, local. She works for the United States government. In essence, she takes an oath of office, she submits to us, she certifies things, she's an officer of the court, that means she's a Commonwealth employee, that means she's a federal employee, right? Isn't that how it goes? Am I wrong? So there were no flags within the actual system to protect my son when I called, because nobody got the information. They got the information, but they did nothing about it. So if they allow, if there's no red flags, and like I said, I was never approached by the FBI, the CIA, who am I forgetting? The state police. I was never approached from any party when I called in 2007, which is frightening, because being on the clock and me saying, hey, I need your help, there's something here I don't understand and it doesn't make sense to me. This was in 2007. This is what I said to them. It doesn't look right. And they don't at least pretend to play fair and to have a detective come out of their own county. They could have asked the state police to come out to see me. They could have asked Philadelphia, Montgomery, Bucks, Chester, Sullivan, Bradford counties to talk to me about the report so that they can remain not in conflict of interest. So, based upon that information, they are intentionally creating a conflict of interest, not investigating a call that I made and that is heavily documented, or that Harrisburg has. They're guilty of not protecting my son. Now, he is at stake here. So, had they had investigated in 2007, what happened after that time would never have happened. I would never have lost my son. We would have gotten him help for not the ADHD that she was fighting for, but for the TBI that I didn't know I would needed to be fighting for at the time when this was going on. He wouldn't have been mistreated medically for all of his life, and that's a fact. The clock would have stopped in 2007, and we could have gotten his neurological and got his MRI and had him scanned to make sure that, when he was 5 years old, that he could have had, a better future. Because the beginning didn't start out so well, let's get him help today. It's 2007. I'm a dad. I want him, to be checked out. I want him to know he's okay. I want him to know, that's what I'm asking for when I called the Pennsylvania Child Abuse Hotline. Was I needed their help because it was so horrible that for me at the time that's why I called. So I'm not coming from the standpoint of, I'm hostile, I'm angry, I'm saying, no, I'm saying is that I'm smart enough to know that they were on the clock when that happened, and the fact that not a phone call from a detective from an out of county, a state police, a federal person, nobody wants to talk to this federal employee, right? So it's not me being paranoid, it's the fact that it went nowhere and died right there. So as far as I'm concerned, Bucks County said, we don't agree with this. We're going to side with the mother and not help the child. That was their choice. They're on the clock for helping the kid because I called the child abuse hotline. I didn't call for Bucks County to hide this. If I wanted to do that, then I probably would have called child services directly from Bucks County. But I didn't. I made sure I left the breadcrumbs there at those places, instead of calling Bucks County directly, that those pieces of breadcrumb to Harrisburg, to the regional, to the other area, and then to Bucks County, that they all have those records of them. So they're there. But Bucks County is on the clock for helping him because they had the responsibility to at least, at a minimum, find out what the heck I'm talking about. Sometimes I don't even understand. But now I do. It took me 24 years or 19 years to solve it, but yeah, I do. I know what happened to my son. I was not there. And I know he took a flight of stairs down and laid on the floor unconscious. His breathing was hardly there. He threw up. His eyes rolled back of his head. And this court reporter let him go down this far without even calling 911. She called the pediatrician, made an appointment, and he's never been talked about since that day. And it is now 19 years later on the clock, and I'm talking about it. How about that? You're on the clock. Somebody owes that boy an MRI or CAT scan because I did call and warn, because the facts are there, because the county, the state has the records of them. So, in essence, all I've been asking for is to have my son treated and helped. Bucks County's on the clock for making sure that happens. It's not my fault they ignored the phone call. I didn't make them do that. I gave them nothing but saying, I'm on your side. Help me, help my son. Like I'm doing by calling, and you're going to be rude. and not call me back, that's pretty. That was a bit telltale sign. That's why I kept a diary every day after that, because I knew you were going to sit on their side, Bucks County. I mean, that's kind of rude. Protect my kid. Don't even protect me. Protect my kid. That's what you get paid for from Pennsylvania. Your job is to protect. That's why you have these agencies, because they get money from the state to be functioning. Here's a law-abiding citizen saying, here, Bucks County, there's something here. Let's talk about it. They didn't want to talk about it. Okay. But it's taxpayer money. They're being funded to protect my kid. Bucks County Children and Youth is there for Child Protective Services to protect my child, and Protective Services is saying, no, we're not going to at least check his medical. We're not going to give him an MRI. We're not going to give him the help he needs. And that's what Bucks County has told me since 2007. Their job is to protect my son when I call or investigate. That's their job. Not to argue with the father whether or not I called. They just crack me up all the time. They just crack me up over the years. All the lying and mistelling and lies and mistruths, and I find it funny. But being on the clock, yeah, you owe that kid a neurological visit. You owe him an MRI. You owe him tests. Make sure that he is good. You owe him that. That's the right thing to do for a child in this circumstance. You take him and you find out the evidence and you push forward. Just because you pretended it wasn't there doesn't mean I had to. And I didn't, because I love my son. And I know deep in his heart, he loves me. If he can have the memory there to remember his first 10 years of life and who was there with him, which he probably forgets now because of his brain damage. He doesn't remember his 10 years with me. He doesn't know the great things that we've done. That's why I posted online about the great things that we've done. That's not even everything. To hopefully jog his memory, but he doesn't have any recollection. It was beat out of him. He wasn't allowed out of her sight. He was kept basically like a prisoner this whole time. Basically. He wasn't allowed to talk to me, not allowed to see me, not allowed nothing. And I did nothing to him. But he doesn't remember any of that stuff. He's 24 years old. If he had his upbringing with me, he should remember that. Like I remember the good things that happened with my mom. My son has no memory of that. Come on, this is TBI symptoms 101. It's so funny that it's a joke. That being on the clock and doing your job, that's required, that you signed up for it. If you don't want to do the job in Bucks County, don't do the job in Bucks County. Don't pick and choose who you want to represent. My son is a classic one who needed it, and that was the least that happened from Bucks. And they didn't even have a doctor go over and take a look at him. They didn't even have him evaluated in 2007. Not a phone call back. Not a response. I got a plain old from them. That's what they did. They did that to me, to him. I would have settled for an out of county to have picked him up and said, let's go to the doctor. This isn't ADHD, buddy. This is your traumatic brain injury talking. This isn't allergies. This is allergies. This isn't seasonal allergies. No, you have real allergies to something. Yes, you have real brain damage to something. That's what should have happened in 2007. Am I an asshole for saying it in 2026? I may very well be. But when you mess with one of God's children, like in this capacity, when it's your job to protect and serve this county and state that you get paid to do, and you say no to my kid, the hypocrisy is he's one of your kids. He works for your court reporter. Your court reporter works for Bucks County, and you took care of her, but you won't take care of him. And he is a child of somebody who works in Bucks County, and that's how you treat a child of somebody who works for Bucks County or the federal government or whichever one it is. That's the America that we live in, that we're going to pick and choose who we're going to defend and protect. I'm sorry. Am I off base here? We do it for that, right? The red, white, and blue. That's why we protect and serve. That's why we keep law and order. That's because this is our finest moment in history, knowing that my government chose to protect the victim or protect the perpetrator instead of the victim. That's the crime here. They chose her over him. I don't care about that. I care about getting my son an MRI, a CAT scan. That's what I care about. But if a man who barely passed high school, who's given his life over to God, has trusted him in all his ways, acknowledging him, and he'll direct my path, believes that this was the path that I was supposed to be on, I do believe that. And it hurt watching them be on the clock and watching them do wrong things all the time because of this court reporter that I wasn't a court reporter when I met her. I mean, wasn't a Bucks County court reporter when I met her. She was a freelance court reporter up in Manhattan. When I met her, she wasn't a Bucks County. I knew nothing about Bucks County in the government in this way ever until now. Thank you for teaching me. Thank you for teaching me. So here's my best advice. Allow me to share with the world what Bucks County didn't do so that we can make sure that the next generation of Americans will never have to suffer the way Josh suffered. That's who I care about here. They said, they made a big, huge statement. It should have been neon lights up in the sky. We are protecting the mom. We're not protecting your kid. And I heard them. I heard them say that to me. That was as loud and clear because not one phone call day after day after day after day. I said, okay, that's how you want to play it. I'm a very smart, patient man. That's the game you want to play. I got you. I will do my job. And that was writing down every day what was, or when it was important, or talk about the diary. I kept a diary of this woman. So allow me to fill in the gap between my phone call in 2007 and what my son went through as a result of Bucks County's blatant, very loud, very strong signal that they're going to stay with this woman instead of my son. That diary will fill in the gap along with all the legal and medical and physiological, educational and parental disasters that happened after 2007. It's right there. All the paperwork's there. I don't have to lie or make it up. Plenty of evidence. So that's what I love about it. They said no. And I don't listen. I'm terrible at listening. When I'm being told I'm not allowed to protect my son and being put in jail for it and being told no and forced out of my state and forced to go to jail for long time for 13 months without a trial, without a conviction, without anybody knowing the true facts, without my public defender telling me. But Bucks County, you're on the clock, and you can't touch me now. Not even in Pennsylvania, so I don't know how you're going to try to pull another stunt other than coming clean and saying that you chose her over my son because he doesn't have any paperwork supporting any sort of therapy because of his 70 plus G, 100 G fall to his head. And he was laying lifeless. And nobody else knew. God knew. It took me 4 years to find out. He was almost gone. But then I have a responsibility as a father to pick him up and to get him on his right spot. That's my job. That's my God-given right to help protect him and to raise him. That's my job. And when I find out in 2007 someone's not doing their job, I call and beg for help. And they say no. Look him in the eyes. That's why I put his eyes up on my YouTube. Look him in the eyes and say no. I want Bucks County. It would be nice for them to, I know the answers, but, go to his face. Diane, go to his face and tell him there's no child abuse here. You told me. Why don't you go tell him? Well, Detective Coolin, how about you go tell Josh that there's no child abuse there? Look him in the eyes and tell him he's good. How about you, Chief Kelly? You said there was no child abuse there. How about you, Sergeant Golden from Yardley Borough? And, tell him to his face that there's no child abuse there. You guys have been shoving this down my throat for 19 years. I'm throwing it up, bro. I'm throwing up all of the crap you tried to have me swallow. It never went down. And you're still on the clock and you're delaying the game. Delay of game. This was the game that you started. You chose not to respond to the victim. I didn't do that. I was for the victim. Didn't know I had to put up flares. I didn't know I thought I was raising the flag to say my son needs help and this is why. And I was doing the right thing. I get that. And I did. I didn't know I had to call multiple times or try to do. I didn't know it was that difficult. I thought it was a simple phone call. They make it sound so easy on the radio. That they still have on the radio up in Pennsylvania. If you know or suspect child abuse, call the child abuse hotline. And that's false. That's not how it works. Only if they choose to. So stop falsely advertising on the radios up in Pennsylvania. Stop falsely advertising to the people of Pennsylvania to make them feel safe that you hear this on the radio and it's okay to do that. Because let me tell you, when I called and they never called back, they told me they can't do their job. Child abuse hotline, Harrisburg, Bucks County, they can't do their job. One phone call back. At least say no. They didn't even give me the courtesy. So you are still on the clock. Now you know he didn't fall from one step, as previously reported by the mother to the doctor in writing. It's a lie. You got the facts. Now make your move. Do the right thing for him. That's all. Not for me. For the boy. Get him an MRI, CAT scan. Let him know how bad it is, and we can move forward. Just do your job. You're on the clock.